Hello. What?
What happened?
It's the hospital. They said Lawrence has been involved in a ghastly accident.
The morning sun had barely risen, but Adeola's heart was already racing. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she drove through the quiet streets toward Lawrence's family house. All night she had barely slept. The same question had echoed in her mind again and again. What if Lawrence is also AS? Each time the thought came, she quickly pushed it away. No, he's probably AA, she whispered to herself while driving. Yet the fear refused to disappear. 6 years of love. 6 years of memories, 6 years of dreams. Everything suddenly felt as if it was standing on the edge of a cliff. Within minutes, she pulled into the compound of the Ifedi family house. She stepped out of the car slowly, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. As she walked toward the living room, she met Mrs. Obadiah Ifedi, Lawrence's mother. "Adeola, my dear," Obadiah said warmly, "good morning." Adeola forced a polite smile and greeted respectfully. "Good morning, Ma." "You came to see Lawrence?" "Yes, Ma. He is upstairs in his room." Adeola nodded. "Thank you, Ma." Her legs felt heavier with every step as she walked toward the staircase. Each step brought her closer to the answer she feared. When she reached Lawrence's door, she knocked softly. "Come in," Lawrence's voice replied. Adeola opened the door slowly. Lawrence was sitting on the edge of his bed, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Babe, you're here so early." But the moment he saw her face, the smile disappeared. "What's wrong?" Adeola closed the door behind her. Her voice trembled slightly. "Lawrence? We have a problem." Lawrence sat up straight immediately. "What kind of problem?" Adeola walked closer slowly. "Last night my mom asked me something." "What did she ask?" Adeola swallowed. "She asked if we know each other's genotype." Lawrence frowned slightly. "That's true. We never talked about that." Adeola nodded. "Yes." Lawrence leaned forward. "So what's yours?" Adeola's eyes began to fill with tears. "My genotype is AS." For a moment, the room became completely silent. Lawrence froze. His expression slowly changed. Adeola noticed. "Lawrence, what's wrong?" Lawrence looked away for a moment before speaking quietly. "Mine is also AS." The words felt like a thunderstorm crashing inside the room. Adeola's legs became weak instantly. Tears rolled down her face. "No," she whispered. Lawrence ran his hand through his hair, struggling to breathe normally. "Are you sure?" he asked weakly. "Yes," Adeola replied in tears. Lawrence stood up slowly and walked toward her. Both of them were shaking. Then suddenly Adeola burst into tears. "How did we forget something like this?" she cried. Lawrence held her tightly. "I don't know." For the first time in 6 years, the future they had built together suddenly felt impossible. They held each other tightly, both crying silently. Outside the room, Lawrence's younger sister was walking past the corridor when she heard the sound of crying. She paused for a moment, confused. Then she quickly went downstairs. "Mom," she said to Obadiah, "Lawrence and Adeola are crying upstairs." Obadiah looked concerned and stood up quickly. But before she could reach the staircase, Adeola came down rushing, tears streaming down her face. "Adeola?" Obadiah called, but Adeola couldn't even speak. She walked straight outside, entered her car, and drove away in tears. Obadiah immediately rushed upstairs. She entered Lawrence's room and found him sitting on the bed with his head in his hands. "My son, what happened?" Lawrence looked up slowly. His eyes were red. "Mom, Adeola and I are both AS." Obadiah gasped softly. For a moment she didn't know what to say. She had grown to love Adeola like a daughter, but she also knew the truth. 2 AS genotypes meant danger for their future children. She sat beside Lawrence and placed her hand on his shoulder. "My son, I'm so sorry." Lawrence broke down again. Within days, both families decided to hold a meeting. The Martins family and the Ifedi family gathered in Babatunde's living room. Everyone looked serious. Adeola and Lawrence sat quietly beside each other, holding hands. After a long discussion about genetics, health risks, and the future of unborn children, the elders finally reached a painful decision. Chief Ifedi spoke slowly. "My children, this decision is not easy for any of us." Babatunde nodded sadly. "But it is for your future." Adeola already knew what was coming. Lawrence squeezed her hand tightly. "You both cannot get married." The words fell like a hammer. Adeola burst into tears instantly. Lawrence looked down, unable to speak. Even their parents were heartbroken, but they believed they had no choice. After the meeting ended, Adeola and Lawrence hugged each other tightly outside the house. 6 years, Adeola whispered in tears. Lawrence held her close. I thought we would grow old together. They both cried like two people watching their future disappear. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed, but neither of them could move on. Lawrence became quiet and distant. He struggled to focus on anything. The thought that haunted him the most was one question. How do I start my life again after 6 years? Adeola also struggled deeply. Every place reminded her of Lawrence. Every memory brought tears. Almost 1 year and 6 months passed, yet neither of them had entered another relationship. They were both still trapped inside the memories of a love they were forced to leave behind. One evening, Adeola attended a birthday party with some friends. The celebrant was a family friend. During the event, Adeola went to the restroom. That was where she met someone new, a man named Nii. He was actually the cousin of the celebrant. They started talking casually while washing their hands. Are you enjoying the party? Nii asked. Adeola smiled politely. Yes, it's nice. You look like someone who isn't really in the mood for parties, Nii joked. Adeola laughed for the first time in a long while. Something about Nii's calm personality felt comforting. Later in the party hall, they met again and talked more. Before she left, Nii asked for her number. I would like to keep in touch, he said. Adeola hesitated slightly, but eventually she agreed. Over the next few weeks, Nii called her often and asked her out on dates, but Adeola kept refusing. Her heart still belonged to Lawrence. Her friends noticed this and began encouraging her. Adeola, you deserve to be happy again. Even her mother spoke to her one evening. My daughter, she said gently. You are almost 28. Life must move forward. Adeola sat quietly. What happened between you and Lawrence was not anyone's fault, her mother continued, but you cannot stay in the past forever. Adeola finally sighed. I think I should speak to Lawrence first. One afternoon, Adeola went to Lawrence's house. When Lawrence opened the door and saw her, his heart skipped. They sat quietly inside his living room. Adeola took a deep breath. Lawrence, I met someone. Lawrence's heart tightened instantly. He wants to love me, she continued softly. Tears filled her eyes. But it's difficult for me because I still love you. Lawrence couldn't speak. Adeola continued in tears. You know I will always love you. But I am a woman. Age is no longer my friend. Lawrence looked down silently. We have to move on with our lives, she said gently. Adeola stood up slowly. She hugged him tightly, then kissed him softly through tears. Goodbye, my love. She walked away. Lawrence sat there for a long time after she left. Something inside him finally broke. That night he made a life-changing decision. He would leave Nigeria. He would go to the United Kingdom for his master's degree. Maybe distance would help him heal. Before leaving, he blocked Adeola on every phone line and social media account, not because he hated her, but because he loved her too much to watch her belong to someone else. After the painful conversation between Adeola and Lawrence that day, life slowly began to move forward, but not in the way either of them had imagined. Adeola tried to follow the advice of her friends and her mother. She began giving Nii a chance. Nii was patient, gentle, and understanding. He knew Adeola had loved someone deeply before him, and he never tried to rush her healing. Instead, he simply stayed beside her. Over the weeks, their conversations became longer. Their meetings became more comfortable. Gradually, Adeola began to smile again. But even as she tried to move forward with her life, a part of her heart still worried about Lawrence. She knew how deeply he had loved her, and she also knew how difficult it must have been for him to accept their separation. So one afternoon, she decided to visit Lawrence's family house. When Adeola arrived at the Ifedi family house, she greeted Mrs. Obidia Ifedi respectfully. Good afternoon, Ma. Obidia smiled warmly as always. Adeola, my dear, it's good to see you. Adeola sat down slowly. Ma, is Lawrence around? Obidia's expression changed slightly. She sighed gently. My dear, Lawrence moved out of the house some months ago. Adeola looked confused. Moved out? Yes. Where did he go? Obidia hesitated. We don't really know exactly where he is staying now. Adeola's heart tightened. But why? Obidia spoke carefully. He said he needed space. He didn't want to keep contact with anyone connected to you for now. Adeola felt a sharp pain in her chest. He said that? Obidia nodded slowly. He said he needs time to heal. Adeola looked down quietly. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Obidia added gently, "But he still calls us sometimes. We know he is okay." Adeola forced a small smile. "I'm glad he is okay." Before leaving, she said softly, "Please, if you speak to him, tell him I asked about him." Obidia nodded. "I will." Even after that visit, Adeola still tried reaching out to Lawrence. She sent him messages, she called his phone, but every attempt failed. Lawrence had blocked her number. He had also blocked her on WhatsApp, social media, and every other platform. Adeola didn't understand why. She felt hurt. Why would he shut me out completely? She asked herself many nights. But what she didn't know was the truth. Lawrence had blocked her not out of anger, but because he loved her too much. Watching her move on with another man would destroy him completely. Blocking her was the only way he believed he could heal. Soon after blocking Adeola, Lawrence began processing his documents to travel to the United Kingdom for his master's degree in civil engineering. He believed distance would help him rebuild his life. Months later, he finally left Nigeria. Even though he was far away, the Martins family and the Ifedi family still kept in contact. The love and friendship that had grown between the two families during Adeola and Lawrence's relationship did not disappear. They still visited each other occasionally. They still respected each other deeply. But there was one topic they all avoided: Lawrence and Adeola. More than a year later, Adeola's relationship with Nee had grown stronger. Nee eventually proposed to her. Adeola accepted. Wedding preparations began. But one thing still remained in her heart. She wanted to tell Lawrence herself. Not because she wanted his permission, but because he had once been the most important person in her life. So she continued sending emails to Lawrence, email after email. Sometimes 3 or 4 messages every week. Lawrence saw every single message, but he never replied. Finally, 1 week before her wedding, Adeola sent one last message. She wrote, "Lawrence, this will be the last message I will ever send you. I have tried my best to reach you, but you never responded. My wedding is on October 2nd. Here is my invitation card. If you ever loved me, please come. If you don't come, I will never try to see you again in this life. Goodbye." In London, Lawrence stared at the email for a long time. His chest felt tight. Memories flooded his mind. 6 years of love, 6 years of laughter, 6 years of dreams. Tears rolled down his face. He whispered quietly to himself, "Maybe this is the last time I will ever see her." So he made a decision. He would go to Nigeria. He would attend Adeola's wedding, not to stop it, but to wish her happiness. One last time. On the morning of October 2nd, Adeola's wedding day, Lawrence finally arrived in Nigeria. But his arrival was later than planned. He had experienced several delays while booking his flight. He checked into a hotel quickly so he could prepare properly before going to the wedding ceremony. Meanwhile, Adeola was at the wedding venue surrounded by friends and family. She looked beautiful in her wedding dress. Her heart was calm. She had finally accepted that Lawrence would never respond to her messages. She believed he had truly moved on. At about 1:23 p.m., the Ifedi family were preparing to leave their house to attend Adeola's wedding. They had already accepted the invitation because they still loved Adeola dearly. But just as they were about to leave, Chief Ifedi's phone rang. He answered. Within seconds, his face changed completely. "What?" Obidia rushed toward him. "What happened?" Chief Ifedi looked shaken. "That was the hospital. They said Lawrence has been involved in a serious accident." Obidia froze. "What?" "They said he is in critical condition." The entire family rushed into their cars immediately. They drove to the hospital as fast as possible. But when they arrived, the doctor walked toward them with a sad expression. "I'm sorry. Those 2 words shattered everything. Your son didn't survive the injuries." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Obidia screamed loudly, "Blood of Jesus, my only son!" She collapsed into tears. Chief Ifedi stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. Their daughters cried uncontrollably. The son they had raised, the son they had dreamed about, was gone. Later that evening, the Martins family called the Ifedi family. They were wondering why they had not yet arrived at the wedding ceremony. Chief Ifedi answered the call. His voice trembled. There was an emergency. They could not bring themselves to say the truth. They knew that day was the happiest day of Adeola's life. They could not destroy it with such heartbreaking news, so they remained silent. And Adeola got married that day, without ever knowing that the man she once loved had died on the same day. 2 days later, Chief Ifedi finally told Baba Tunde and his wife the truth. They were shocked and heartbroken, but after long discussions they all agreed on one painful decision. Adeola must not know. Not yet. She had just started a new marriage. Knowing that Lawrence died on her wedding day could destroy her emotionally. So they buried the truth, and Lawrence was buried quietly, while Adeola continued her new life without ever knowing the tragedy that had happened.